Naruto. My script has absolutely no problems. Chapter 61. Uzumaki Naruto stood at the entrance of Yakiniku-Q, staring at the glass door, and immediately felt nervous. Should he find an excuse to run away first? While he was still hesitating, everyone else had already gone inside. Naruto had no choice but to close his eyes, steel his resolve, and quickly follow Hyuga Kiyoshinari into the barbecue restaurant. Welcome. A waiter wearing an apron approached them. Naruto's body unconsciously tensed up, waiting for the smile on the waiter's face to vanish, waiting for him to show a look of disgust and then utter words like, "Sorry, we're full today," to drive them away. But, how many in your party? The waiter looked at their group of 6, his smile unchanged. Just the 6 of us. We'd like a private room, Kiyoshinari replied. Certainly, please follow me. Having said that, the waiter turned and led the way. Naruto was stunned. Could it be he didn't recognize him? The waiter led them to a spacious private room containing a large table with a built-in grill in the center. Please have a seat, 6 of you. The menus are here. The waiter took out 6 menus and handed one to each person. Even now, Naruto still hadn't fully recovered, staring blankly at the menu in his hand, his emotions complicated. Ino Yamanaka noticed his strangeness and asked curiously, Naruto, what's wrong? Why are you standing there? Nothing. Naruto quickly snapped out of it and sat down at the table with the others. Soon, their orders were taken. The waiter wrote down the order, bowed respectfully, and turned to leave. Throughout the entire process, the waiter treated Naruto exactly the same way he treated everyone else. A purely professional, businesslike interaction between a server and a guest, devoid of any extra emotion. But it was precisely this attitude that brought a strong, bitter pang to the depths of Naruto's nasal cavity. Confusion, sorrow, relief, and pain mixed into a large pot of sour, bitter, and astringent soup, stuck in his throat, unable to be swallowed or spat out. This feeling was too unfamiliar. His heart felt as if something had forcefully squeezed it, only to release it again, leaving him bewildered. He had already grown used to being treated differently, accustomed to the coldness and hostility, but suddenly finding a place that accepted him calmly and ordinarily gave him a strong sense of unreality. No, he absolutely couldn't cry here. Naruto secretly wiped the corner of his eye, took a deep breath, and tried hard to calm himself down. He raised his head, his gaze firmly fixed on Hyuga Kiyoshinari, who was sitting across from him. It was Kiyoshinari. It was Kiyoshinari who introduced him to so many friends. And it was Kiyoshinari who brought him into this barbecue restaurant for the first time. If it hadn't been for Kiyoshinari, right now, he would probably be staying home alone, waiting for instant ramen to cook. Naruto's fist under the table clenched tightly. The dishes were served quickly. Fresh red slices of meat and vibrant green vegetables were neatly arranged on the plates. The moment the food touched the surface of the scorching charcoal grill, it immediately made a pleasant sizzle sound, and the rich aroma of meat instantly spread, making everyone swallow hard. The meat is ready, Kiyoshinari said, picking up a piece of grilled meat and signaling everyone, eat it while it's hot. I'm digging in. Naruto had been waiting impatiently. He grabbed a thick slice of beef and stuffed it into his mouth. The scalding juices burst forth in his mouth, making him hiss and quickly open his mouth to exhale. Idiot. Uchiha Sasuke sighed, and casually pushed the chilled drink in front of him, which he hadn't touched, toward Naruto's hand. The others also started eating. Hyuga Hinata picked up a small, slightly charred piece of meat, brought it to her mouth, gently blew on it, and then took a small bite, chewing delicately. This was the side of her that she showed more often, the side of a young miss. By the way, Ino. Kiyoshinari suddenly spoke. As the host treating everyone, his voice naturally attracted everyone's attention. Spring is coming soon. Your family's flower shop must look incredibly beautiful then, right? At the mention of this, Ino proudly puffed out her chest. Of course. Spring is the busiest and most beautiful time for the flower shop. We'll definitely decorate the store so beautifully that people won't be able to look away. That sounds amazing. Sakura's eyes lit up when she heard this. Ino, you absolutely have to take me to see it. Ino waved her hand dismissively and agreed readily, no problem. Just as their conversation drew everyone else's attention away, Kiyoshinari quietly slipped a stack of grilled meat slices into Hinata's bowl. Hinata was taking small bites when she suddenly felt her bowl become heavier. She looked down and opened her eyes wide in surprise. Kiyoshinari had just retracted his chopsticks and winked at her, as if saying, "Don't worry, just eat. I've got you covered. By the way, Ino, since you apply floristry knowledge to fashion, have you ever tried applying fashion knowledge to floristry?" Kiyoshinari continued to question her, ensuring the topic was sustained. "How do you understand me so well?" Ino's eyes lit up, and she immediately started rambling excitedly about the topic, even putting down her chopsticks. While listening to Ino's explanation, Kiyoshinari continued to place meat on the grill, simultaneously keeping an eye on Hinata's bowl out of the corner of his eye. Whenever she was close to finishing, Kiyoshinari would quietly add more to her bowl when the others weren't paying attention. Hinata was a little nervous at first, afraid of being discovered by the others. But before long, she realized that Kiyoshinari had managed the rhythm perfectly. Everyone else's attention was constantly drawn to various topics, and no one noticed that the raw meat on the table was mysteriously disappearing. Time passed minute by minute, and the plates on the table were unknowingly all empty. Everyone ate and chatted, and no one paid attention to how many plates of meat they had actually finished, but everyone was very satisfied. Naruto was practically sinking into the back of his chair, gently patting his distended stomach with one hand. "Phew. I'm so full. I can barely walk." "That won't do," Kiyoshinari said, taking 4 movie tickets from his pocket and waving them at the group. "We still have a second activity." Naruto was instantly drawn to the brightly colored ticket stubs and asked curiously, "What are those?" "A movie," Kiyoshinari said casually, clearly not intending to elaborate. "In short, just follow me." "Oh." Naruto replied, shifted his gaze from the movie tickets, and stared blankly at everyone gathered around discussing them. He couldn't help but let out a soft chuckle. Sasuke, who was closest to him, immediately caught the strange laugh, turned his head, and asked, "What is it?" "Nothing." Naruto paused, the smile on his face not fading, but becoming much softer, completely different from his usual boisterous demeanor. "I just feel." He looked around, his gaze finally resting on Hyuga Kiyoshinari. "I feel so satisfied." Sasuke glanced at him, returning to his usual tone of disdain. "Who told you to eat so much? You deserve to have a bloated stomach." He walked out of the private room, and when he returned, he was holding a hawthorn candy. "Here, rub your stomach for a while yourself. I'm certainly not going to carry you." The sky had completely darkened, and streetlights, visible everywhere, lit up one after another, illuminating the entire Konoha village. The newly built cinema stood out among the traditional Konoha houses, its huge neon lights flashing in various colors, and a crowd of spectators had already gathered at the entrance, waiting to enter. "Wow, it's so big." Uzumaki Naruto looked up at the cinema, his eyes filled with wonder. "I was already looking forward to it when that uncle told us about it." "Let's hurry inside," Sakura said, clenching her fingers with a hint of excitement. Except for Hyuga Kiyoshinari, the other 5 were experiencing a movie for the first time. They looked around curiously, their eyes full of novelty. Naruto looked left and right, almost bumping into a pillar. Although Sasuke maintained an outward calm, Kiyoshinari noticed his gaze scanning around. Ino and Sakura excitedly discussed the movie posters on the wall. Ino turned from the poster wall and asked, "Kiyoshinari, where are our seats?" Kiyoshinari took out the 4 tickets and distributed them, telling them to find their seats by number, while he pulled Hinata and went ahead. There were 6 tickets, and because they were bought by 2 people, the seats were not entirely together. Kiyoshinari and Hinata quickly found their seats in the middle back section, which offered a good view. After they sat down, Kiyoshinari reached into his pocket, intending to take out the 2 slightly crumpled tickets and put them away separately. Just then, his fingers touched a small box in his pocket. He paused, then turned his head and called out in a low voice, "Hinata." "What is it, Kiyoshinari-kun?" At that very moment, all the lights in the screening room suddenly went out, plunging the entire space into darkness. "Wow!" Naruto, caught off guard, exclaimed, "Why did it suddenly get dark?" "Shish." Ino, sitting next to him, immediately tugged his arm. "The movie is about to start. Didn't the projectionist just say to be quiet?" Oh, right. In the darkness, Kiyoshinari's hand fumbled, unexpectedly touching a soft hand. The hand first flinched slightly, but then, as if finding something to lean on, it firmly gripped his hand back, and the subtle tremor, along with the warmth of her palm, clearly transmitted to him. Guided by this, Kiyoshinari slipped the small box into Hinata's hand. This is for you. What is this? You'll know when you open it. As soon as he finished speaking, the screen in front lit up, and images and music emerged simultaneously, pulling the entire screening room out of darkness. The light illuminated the expressions on the faces of every row of audience members, and also illuminated Hinata and the small box in her hand. In this sole light source, she lowered her head and carefully opened the lid of the box. A delicate hairpin lay quietly on the padding. The body of the hairpin was made of warm, dark wood, and the head was an exquisite silver flower with a tiny gecko stone embedded in its center. As the constantly changing light and shadow of the movie swept across the tiny gecko stone, it refracted dreamlike, shimmering light. Hinata's eyes widened instantly. She stared blankly at the hairpin, momentarily losing her ability to speak. She could feel her heart pounding violently, and her cheeks flushed again. Do you remember that day? Kiyoshinari's voice sounded in her ear, low yet clearer to her than the dialogue in the movie. You were holding this hairpin in the accessory shop, but because Ishida suddenly started talking to me, you worried something was wrong on my end and rushed out. I passed by that accessory shop today, saw it was still in the display window, so I just bought it. Hinata looked down at the box in her hand, her fingertips tracing the wood grain on the lid repeatedly. Her eyes were slightly red, and the shifting light and shadow from the screen flickered in her pure white eyes, unable to conceal the shimmering moisture. Kiyoshinari-kun. Her voice was almost drowned out by the movie's soundtrack, but fortunately, they were close enough for Kiyoshinari to hear. He tilted his ear slightly. Why are you so good to me? Hinata gathered her courage and finally spoke. Kiyoshinari suddenly turned his head, his pupils widening abruptly. What are you talking about? Although Hinata was still looking down, her voice was a little clearer than before. Why are you so good to me? I haven't even given you any gifts, and I'm always the one who needs you. By the end, her voice was so soft it was almost inaudible. Wasn't it because you were worried about me first that you didn't buy it? It's not expensive anyway, Kiyoshinari said, scratching the back of his head, his tone calm and somewhat matter of fact. Then, during dinner earlier, you kept secretly putting meat on my plate, and helped distract everyone. Because you came to find me this morning, but I just brushed you off, and then I came back to find you silly waiting for me for several hours, so I thought I'd make it up to you. Hearing this, Hinata could no longer hold back her tears, and they streamed down her cheeks. No. You. Kiyoshinari didn't know what to say for a moment, and confusion appeared in his eyes. Was she crying because her fantasy was shattered? Well, that's fine too. Kiyoshinari could roughly guess Hinata's feelings for him, but he had absolutely no intention of developing things in that direction. She was too young, it would make him feel like a creepy old man coaxing a little girl. It was too strange. Besides, he thought his logical reasoning was very clear. He felt her kindness, so he wanted to be kind to her in return. He had this give and take attitude with everyone. It was just that Hinata was a bit more special than others, their relationship was closer, so he responded with more sincerity. With things suddenly developing to this point, Kiyoshinari no longer had the heart to continue watching the movie. After a while, Hinata's emotions stabilized. She gripped Kiyoshinari's wrist and slowly said, "It's precisely because you are like this, Kiyoshinari, that I feel this way. No, not everyone, after receiving affection, thinks about reciprocating, and I can't accept it with a clear conscience." Kiyoshinari fell silent. The deep affection of the two-faced turtle was reciprocated in the golden cicada paradise. When it fell into a deep coma, Meimei did not abandon it but guarded it attentively. Although Black Tiger liked Blue Rabbit, he did not lose his mind because of it and always focused on his career. When needed, he could also use bombs to ambush Rainbow Cat and Blue Rabbit. As for Tom, although he went broke chasing the white cat, at least he got a chance to kiss her, it was just that his competitors were too strong. And you, my friend. Is your beloved truly worth your love? I haven't done anything significant. Hyuga Kiyoshinari looked at the screen in front of him, his voice low but very clear. Please, don't view me as too special. His tone was one of the few times Hinata had heard him speak so solemnly since she met him, even using the word, please, which he wouldn't easily say. Hinata couldn't help but tremble, and her grip on his wrist unconsciously tightened. Hinata, Kiyoshinari noticed her tension and softened his tone slightly, we are friends. Friends don't need such complexity. Many things aren't done for a necessary reason, but simply because, I wanted to do it. The more special you consider me, and the more non-existent meanings you assign to Hyuga Kiyoshinari, then, the real Hyuga Kiyoshinari will only drift further away from you. He sighed softly and finally turned his head. People are always good at overthinking, subconsciously imagining things to be overly beautiful or heavy, but strip away those imaginations, and I'm just an ordinary person. You said you always needed me, but all I did was eat, walk, and chat with you. I just stayed with you when you were stressed, providing a temporary harbor. But as for how to solve the root of your true stress, on those fundamental issues, I actually didn't provide any substantial help. It was always Hyuga Hinata who stood at the forefront, truly facing and striving to overcome difficulties. Hinata's pupils widened slightly, and the fingers that had been tightly gripping Kiyoshinari's wrist slowly loosened their grip, eventually sliding away. She remained silent for a long time, only looking up when the movie was about to end. Yes. Hinata was smiling. It wasn't forced, nor was it relief, it was just a simple smile, without complex implications. However, the sun doesn't emit light for any other purpose, it simply does its own thing, and it has already changed the world. By the time the movie ended, it was already late at night. Uzumaki Naruto, dragging his tired but very satisfied body, climbed up to his apartment building. He lived on the top floor, in a single room. As he took out his key and inserted it into the lock, he habitually said to the empty room, I'm home. However, the moment the door was pushed open, warm yellow light filled the room. His room was very simple, easily seen at a glance, with no space even for guests. At this moment, the room's only visitor was sitting by his bed. Hiruzen Sarutobi, with a kind smile on his face, watched the child who had just returned home. Little Naruto, did you have fun today? Hokage Grandpa. Why are you here? Why are you here? This spontaneous question replaced the usual expectant, you're finally here. Hiruzen Sarutobi was visibly stunned. He hadn't expected his standing in Naruto's heart to change so rapidly, though he had anticipated it. Alas. I came to see you. He suppressed his various thoughts, his voice still gentle. Naruto excitedly bounced in front of Hiruzen Sarutobi, spreading his arms and gesticulating wildly with exaggerated movements. Hokage Grandpa, I met so many people today. First, I met Sasuke, then I met Kiyoshinari. We all went for yakiniku, the yakiniku at that place was delicious. And then, Kiyoshinari took us to see a movie. Naruto counted on his fingers and asked solemnly, after experiencing all this together, they should all be my friends, right? Hokage Grandpa. Of course they're friends, Hiruzen Sarutobi affirmed his idea, as long as you have fun together, then you're friends. That's great. Hiruzen Sarutobi took a puff from his pipe and then asked, Naruto, I also heard you got into a fight with someone. Was it a disagreement? Naruto eagerly explained, although Sasuke and I fought, I can tell he's actually a good person. Oh. Hiruzen Sarutobi looked at him with interest, how so? Naruto thought seriously for a moment and then said, our fight wasn't entirely his fault, we just didn't see eye to eye. But as Kiyoshinari would say, it's called what again? A fight that leads to friendship, Hiruzen Sarutobi reminded him. Right. Naruto nodded repeatedly and continued, I got burned by the yakiniku, and even though Sasuke called me an idiot, he still handed me a drink. When I ate too much, Sasuke would also get me hawthorn candy. Also, when Kiyoshinari said he'd treat us, Sasuke was clearly worried he didn't have enough money, but he just said Kiyoshinari deserved it. It's the first time I've seen such an insincere person. So, Naruto, Hiruzen Sarutobi's tone became even gentler, what kind of person do you think Kiyoshinari is? Naruto tilted his head, thinking seriously for a while. I think Kiyoshinari is just Kiyoshinari. Just like in his eyes, Naruto is just Naruto. We are all just people keeping the shit warm. As soon as he finished speaking, Hiruzen Sarutobi's face crumpled, and a puff of smoke choked out of his nose. On the other side, Uchiha Sasuke pushed open his front door. As he took off his shoes, his mother, Uchiha Makoto, heard the movement and walked out from the living room. Sasuke, your father and I were delayed today. Have you had dinner? I've already eaten, Mom. Sasuke stretched his somewhat stiff shoulders as he walked towards the living room, looking a bit tired. You ate out? Makoto asked curiously, with whom? What did you eat? Yakiniku, Kiyoshinari dragged me there. Oh. Makoto clearly wasn't going to let him off that easily. Who is Kiyoshinari? Why haven't I heard you mention him? Sasuke paused, then slightly turned his head, avoiding his mother's direct gaze, and said in a typical tsundere tone, a bit awkward but trying to maintain composure. Hyuga Kiyoshinari, I guess he's a friend. In front of his family, he was uncharacteristically honest for once. There were no tsundere excuses like, he's alright, or, he's passable, but a direct admission that Kiyoshinari was his friend. A flicker of surprise crossed Makoto's eyes. Sasuke, who always had his brother on his lips and couldn't go 3 sentences without saying, not as good as brother, had suddenly made a friend, and that friend was from the Hyuga clan. Before she could ask for more details, she heard Sasuke continue, he just called too many people, and then we went to some movie. It was really annoying. Who all was there? Makoto pressed with a smile. She knew her son too well. The fact that he would sit down to eat with someone and even willingly go out to play already spoke volumes. 3 girls, and an idiot named Naruto. Makoto's smile instantly froze. Sasuke noticed his mother's abnormality. Mom, what's wrong? Makoto suddenly snapped back, as if emerging from some distant thought. Nothing. By the way, how is this child named Naruto? How would I know? I just met him today. He had intended to end the conversation there, but seeing the worry on his mother's face, though he didn't understand the reason, he added another sentence. With Kiyoshinari as his friend, I imagine he won't be too bad. Hyuga Hinata sat at her desk, her hands gently propping up her cheeks, her gaze fixed on the bright moonlight outside the window, humming an out-of-tune melody unconsciously. On the black notebook spread open before her, the cooldown for the life simulator was about to end. During this final waiting period, everything that happened at the cinema lingered in her mind. In her father's eyes, she should first be a qualified family heir, even to brother Neji, she should first be the young miss of the main family before being a younger sister, let alone other family members. However, only in Hyuga Kiyoshinari's eyes, a friend was a friend, and Hinata was Hinata. How can someone like you say that you're not special? Hinata sighed softly and activated the life simulator before her. The life simulator is starting. Konoha Year 54. Under the strict requirements of my father, Hiyashi, I continued to practice diligently. This year, my progress has been very significant, and father is increasingly satisfied with my performance. I tried to inquire about the hidden cloud village and the border situation, but I never managed to obtain any useful information. Konoha Year 55. News of sporadic conflicts came from the border. The hidden cloud village, unwilling to show weakness, also deployed troops to the border. It is said that there were some small-scale conflicts with Lady Tsunade's troops, but the overall situation remained within controllable limits. At the end of the year, the first batch of branch family members who went to guard the border returned to the Hyuga clan compound, while the second batch of family members departed one after another after the new year. These messages did not cause much stir within the Hyuga clan. Father merely glanced at the casualty statistics and set them aside. The next day, father took me to visit Uncle Hazashi, who had just returned to the village. During our brief interaction, I vaguely noticed that Uncle Hazashi seemed to have undergone some kind of change, and his gaze towards Neji and me became increasingly complex. Konoha Year 56. Father told me that I would soon have a younger sister or brother. Also, next year I would enter the Ninja Academy to study. At the end of the year, the second batch of family members guarding the border also returned, and the third batch of family members was about to depart. Surprisingly, Uncle Hazashi, who was not on this list, voluntarily proposed to father that he wanted to go to the border. Father refused, and the two had a dispute over this, ultimately parting unhappily. I noticed that more and more family members were changing, and a sense of unease welled up in my heart. I vaguely felt that something big was about to happen. Now, I have three options. 1. Go find Kiyoshinari-kun and investigate privately. 2. Inform father and conduct a public thorough investigation. 3. Go find brother Neji and ask him directly. At this point, the first 3 years of the simulator's progress were exactly the same as what she had seen in her previous simulation. Sure enough, it still won't work, Hinata sighed softly, a hint of frustration in her voice. On the way back from the cinema, she had tried to ask Kiyoshinari about the border news, but Kiyoshinari knew little about it and could not provide any useful information. By now, Hinata had clearly realized that the caged bird seal system imposed on the branch family members was utterly unjust, and the chasm that tore the main family and branch family into two kinds of people was not formed overnight. The conflict had already existed, it was just that for a long time, the family members had been dormant in this unreasonable order, and no one truly wanted to shake it or change it. In the previous stage of the simulation, it was the Hidden Cloud Village's infiltration of Konoha that awakened the dormant family members. At that time, guided by the life simulator and her own actions, she successfully thwarted Kumogakure's conspiracy and temporarily reburied the fuse that had almost been lit. But this time, the new fuse was hidden in the distant border, and she couldn't investigate it with her own strength. I can only choose the second option. Hinata murmured to herself, only hoping to make things clear in the simulator and use her father's power to find out what was happening at the border. Only by understanding the cause could she find a way to solve the problem. I decided to inform father of my discoveries and unease. Father, after learning of it, was somewhat concerned and soon made time to privately summon Uncle Hazashi. However, Uncle Hazashi avoided father's scrutinizing gaze and vaguely brushed it off with words like, "Everything is normal." Although father was hesitant, seeing that Uncle Hazashi was unwilling to talk much, he did not pursue the matter further. Thereafter, I brought up the matter to father several times, trying to get information about the border from more family members. But without exception, almost all branch family members remained silent about it, unwilling to say much. This abnormal phenomenon finally caught father's attention, and he began to investigate. Perhaps sensing the main family's attention, the previously restless emotions of the branch family members quieted down for a time, and a suppressive silence permeated throughout the Hyuga clan compound. Konoha year 57. Another year passed, and when the third batch of branch family members from the border troops returned one after another, the long-brewing conflicts in silence erupted like a volcano that had reached its limit. But this time, father seemed to have anticipated and prepared. When the branch family members first began to speak out, father did not hesitate for a moment, and together with all the main family members, activated the caged bird seal technique. Countless branch family members, including brother Neji, fell to the ground in pain, their screams echoing over the Hyuga clan compound, lingering for a long time. Only Kiyoshinari-kun, protected by Lady Tsunade, was spared, but from then on, he moved out of the Hyuga clan compound. Immediately afterward, to appease the branch family members, father announced the lifting of the training restrictions on the main family secret technique, rotation, and improved the treatment of branch family members in all aspects. The clamoring voices of doubt gradually subsided, and the Hyuga clan seemed to return to its previous orderly state. Then, my younger sister was born, and father named her Hyuga Hanabi. I entered the ninja academy to study, but Kiyoshinari-kun left Konoha with Lady Tsunade and was stationed at the border. Konoha year 61, I died. All main family members died. One night. This simulation ends here. Evaluation. Either erupt in silence, or perish in silence. Based on the comprehensive evaluation of this simulation, the host can choose one of the following two rewards. Option 1. Acquire all understanding of the gentle fist art from 3 years later in the simulation. Option 2. Inherit the progress of gentle fist art training from 3 years later in the simulation. Host, please choose carefully. Only one reward can be selected per simulation. I died. In the dojo of the Hyuga residence, Hyuga Hiyashi had been waiting for a while as the morning sun filtered through the leaves in the courtyard. Thump, thump, thump. A series of deliberately heavy footsteps approached from a distance, and Hyuga Hiyashi couldn't help but frown. The paper door slid open with a shish, and he looked up, only to find that today's Hyuga Hinata seemed somewhat different. In the past, she always kept her head down, looking timid, but today, she had an inexplicable sharpness about her. What's gotten into this child today? A hint of doubt flashed in Hiyashi's mind, but he quickly suppressed it. No matter what changes had occurred in Hinata, as long as they weren't significant, the established training plan could not be altered. He nodded slightly, signaling Hinata to stand opposite him. Hinata, are you ready? Hiyashi's voice was as cold and stern as ever. Hinata, on the other hand, raised her hand and assumed the starting stance of the gentle fist art, her body's coordination perfectly natural, without any of the deliberate stiffness that came from trying to be precise. With just this one movement, an unconcealable look of surprise and delight appeared in Hiyashi's eyes. Come, father. Although the girl's voice was calm, Hiyashi detected an unusual undertone in it. Then, let's begin. No sooner had he spoken than a white shadow shot out like an arrow from a bowstring. It was Hinata. Hiyashi's pupils suddenly constricted. In the past, Hinata would always wait for him to make the first move, with defense being the main theme of their sparring. Although there had been some improvement in the past month, such a fierce offensive as today's was a first. This sudden change completely caught him off guard, making him momentarily stunned and revealing a fleeting opening, at which point Hinata's right hand jabbed towards his left rib. The target of the gentle fist art's attacks are the opponent's acupoints. The technique emphasizes precision, and Hinata's strike was perfect in both angle and timing. Rip. In the nick of time, he barely dodged, Hinata's fingertips grazing his clothes by a hair's breadth. Immediately after, Hiyashi's left hand naturally slapped towards Hinata's shoulder, intending to push her away and regain control of the battle rhythm. However, just as Hiyashi thought this attack would be the end of it, Hinata made a move that completely caught him off guard. She used the momentum of her forward rush to leap into the air, abandoning all defense as she closed in, swinging her other hand from the side, aiming directly for his neck. What? Without time to think, Hiyashi's instincts made him instinctively twist his foot on the ground, preparing to activate gentle fist art, 8 trigrams palms revolving heaven. But just as chakra was about to erupt from all his acupoints, Hiyashi forcefully suppressed the impulse. At this moment, he was not facing an enemy, but his daughter. To take on 8 trigrams palms revolving heaven with Hinata's defenseless posture would have unimaginable consequences. Clap. A crisp, muffled sound echoed particularly loudly in the dojo. Hinata's left hand sharply struck an acupoint on the side of Hiyashi's neck, and an unfamiliar chakra instantly pierced his meridians. What is this? Hiyashi sharply turned his head, his incredulous gaze immediately fixed on his daughter, who was so close. What met his eyes was no longer the meek and timid Hinata of old, but a gaze as sharp and fierce as an arrow. Around her fair eye sockets, a clear network of meridians protruded. She activated her Byakugan. 8 trigrams 64 palms. Hinata landed without the slightest pause, letting out a soft cry, and attacked again. After activating the Byakugan, the location of acupoints becomes clearly visible. The nature of this sparring match completely changed from this moment on, no longer a simple move practice, but a true battle belonging to the Hyuga clan. She moved around Hiyashi, constantly trying to attack from various angles, every move displaying its sharpness. What exactly happened to this child? 8 trigrams 64 palms. Hiyashi let out a low cry, responding with the same move. Clap 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 clap. The air crackled with a rapid series of crisp sounds like popping beans. Although every one of Hinata's attacks was neutralized by Hiyashi, she was simultaneously forcing Hiyashi to retreat, and the situation had reversed. However, as the battle continued, Hiyashi finally realized something was amiss. Hinata's attacks were more like an outlet for some kind of resentment. Is she angry at me? The slow-witted Hiyashi finally discovered the truth of the matter, but this only made him more confused. He asked himself if, though strict with his daughter, he had done nothing to wrong her. Is it because I'm usually too strict with her? No. It shouldn't be like that. If it were because of that, she should have shown her dissatisfaction long ago. Why today of all days? Hiyashi was at a loss, but whatever the reason, Hinata's progress was undeniable. Clap. Clap. Hiyashi struck Hinata's shoulder with a palm. Hinata also struck Hiyashi's abdomen with a palm. Ah. Cough. 2 suppressed groans sounded simultaneously. Even though Hinata had given her all, the age difference was ultimately a hard obstacle. In their clash, only Hinata couldn't keep her footing, stumbling back a few steps before falling to the ground. Hinata gasped violently, each breath a heavy, rasping sound like a bellows. Sweat had long soaked her clothes, and her hair clung tightly to her cheeks. But her eyes were more unyielding than ever. Just as she was getting up from the ground, ready to launch another attack regardless of the cost, Hiyashi raised his hand and shouted. Enough! Hiyashi carefully observed his daughter, who was both familiar and utterly unfamiliar. Hinata, your fighting style is too aggressive, completely head-on. This is not how gentle fist should be performed, nor is it your usual style. No. Hinata's chest was still heaving violently, making it difficult to speak, but she still forced herself to look up and meet his gaze. After a moment, Hiyashi's gaze softened slightly. Also, he paused, as if weighing his words. Today, is something on your mind? No. Hinata immediately shook her head in denial. Hiyashi fell silent, finally just slowly uttering a single word, all right. Father, I will take my leave now. With that, Hinata bowed and turned to leave the dojo. Hiyashi stood rooted to the spot, unable to move for a long time, his mind filled with questions. No, why did you just activate your Byakugan directly? That's not how it works in the Hyuga clan at all. You're supposed to start practicing punches against a wooden dummy before dawn, enduring the torment of aching bones and muscles, diligently cultivating every day, accumulating enough experience, and then, on some ordinary morning, naturally awaken your Byakugan. Why did you just get emotional, fight me, and awaken your Byakugan like an Uchiha? That's not how it works in the Hyuga clan at all. I don't accept this. Hinata sat alone in her room, her hands still trembling uncontrollably. But compared to her physical exhaustion, what was truly unbearable was the surge of anger and grievance bottled up inside her heart. Reason told her it was unfair to direct her anger at her father due to the possible future she saw in the simulator. It hadn't happened yet. But I really can't control it. Why? Why couldn't father listen to me just once, seriously investigate the truth about the border, or discuss it with me? He says I am the main family's heir, yet when the critical moment arrives, he only treats me like a child who understands nothing. Does he think that by self-righteously using the caged bird seal, he can turn everything back to the way it was? Honestly, Uncle Hazashi told you long ago, a bird that has experienced flying free will never again grow accustomed to life in a cage. When the clansmen wake up and finally realize it is a shackle, will you still place your hope in the shackle itself? Hinata couldn't help but inwardly resent Hiyashi. But she also knew that she was no different from her father, neither of them could find a truly perfect solution. She had the life simulator to constantly test possibilities, but her father only had the single choice of whether or not to use the caged bird seal. And before that method was found, she also hoped the clansmen could continue to sleep. Just then, a gentle knock came from outside the door. Knock, knock. Young Miss Hinata, the hot water is ready. Please go wash up. The voice of the maid, Hyuga Natsu, came from outside the door. I understand. Hinata responded softly, bracing her hands on the tatami mat beneath her, trying to stand up. However, the previous battle had nearly drained all her strength. Just as she stabilized, her knees buckled uncontrollably. Ah! A short gasp sounded, and her body lost balance, pitching forward. The floor in her vision rapidly grew larger. Just as she thought she was about to fall, the door was swiftly pulled open, and a pair of gentle yet strong arms caught her in time. Young miss. Are you alright? Looking at the floor, which had stopped rushing toward her, and hearing Hyuga Natsu's anxious voice, Hinata's taut nerves finally relaxed slightly. I'm sorry. Sister Natsu, my legs have no strength left. It's alright, young miss, you don't need to blame yourself for this. Hyuga Natsu steadily wrapped her arms around Hinata's body and arms, using her own body as support to slowly help Hinata stand up. Come, watch your step. I'll help you to the bathroom. A hot bath will make you feel better. Steam filled the bathroom. Hyuga Natsu carefully helped Hinata walk in, then began to help her remove the clothes that were soaked with sweat. Young Miss Hinata, I could hear the sounds coming from the dojo even outside. The fight with the clan chief must have been very intense. It was alright. When Hinata's clothes were fully removed, her body was covered in glaring marks left by the training. Her arms were full of obvious bruises, and her shoulders were covered in marks left by pressure point striking, appearing particularly shocking against her pale skin. In previous sparring sessions, she never had so many injuries, but today was different, she had her eye awakening. Young Miss. Hyuga Natsu exclaimed, quickly crouching down to carefully inspect Hinata's injuries. As her fingers traced the blue and purple marks, her face was filled with distress. It's fine, Sister Natsu, they are just superficial wounds. Hinata shook her head, trying hard to appear stronger and dispel the worry in the other woman's eyes. How can you say it's fine? Natsu's tone carried obvious reproach. The reason you feel okay right now is that your body hasn't fully exited the combat state. Once you do, you'll start feeling the pain. Please soak for a while. I'll go get the medicine from the clan chief. Natsu helped Hinata walk toward the tub, then carefully assisted her in sitting down in the water. The warm current enveloped Hinata's exhausted body, seemingly wrapping around her soul as well, causing her to let out a sigh of relief. Is the water temperature suitable? It's very comfortable. Thank you, Sister Natsu. Hinata closed her eyes, savoring the comfort the hot water provided, but soon, her thoughts drifted back to the simulator. Hyuga Natsu then knelt beside the tub, took a towel, dipped it into the water, and began gently wiping Hinata's body. Her movements were very gentle, fearful of hurting the wounds on Hinata's body. Amidst the sound of the rippling water, Hinata couldn't help but ask, Sister Natsu. Hyuga Natsu immediately stopped what she was doing and anxiously asked, Young miss, did I hurt you? Not that, Hinata shook her head. Have you ever thought about what you would do if you weren't a maid? Hinata's question caused Hyuga Natsu to freeze, a hint of confusion and bewilderment appearing in her eyes, but the hand holding the towel continued to wipe Hinata's body. Not being a maid. Natsu murmured Hinata's question, seemingly struggling to consider this hypothetical scenario that had never appeared in the trajectory of her life, but ultimately, she just shook her head. I don't know. Why not? Haven't you ever thought about a version of yourself that is completely different from now? I haven't thought about it, and I don't know how I would begin to think about it, Hyuga Natsu replied, shaking her head, her tone as calm as if stating a simple fact. Ever since young Miss Hinata was born, I have been by your side, and I will continue to be by your side in the future. As long as I can watch you grow up well, I am already content. Without a doubt, Hyuga Natsu's feelings were sincere, and she truly believed what she said. But this answer stirred an indescribable complexity of emotions in Hinata's heart. When one cannot change fate, people exhibit powerful adaptability. The contentment Sister Natsu shows now, could it simply be because she never had a choice to begin with? Hinata didn't know the answer, but continuing to ask would only make Sister Natsu uncomfortable. More importantly, if she were to wake her up, yet be unable to offer help once she was awake, what would be the point of doing it? Alright, you're all clean now. I'll go get the medicine for you right away. Hyuga Natsu wrung out the towel, put it away, and turned to leave the bathroom. After she left, Hinata took a deep breath, submerged her head completely underwater, then opened her eyes and blew bubble after bubble. There was no special meaning to it, she just didn't want to think about those headache-inducing things anymore. She wanted to play for a while. Gurgle, gurgle. In truth, Hyuga Hinata was able to activate her Byakugan not because of emotional agitation, but because of the simulator's reward, 7 years of gentle fist cultivation results. To match this power, her physical fitness also received a comprehensive upgrade. The explosive power, physical coordination, and chakra level she displayed in battle all proved that Hinata had reached the necessary ripeness required to activate the Byakugan in all aspects. Even Hyuga Kiyoshinari himself wasn't aware of this. In any case, he only had to make a wish in the script, and the rest was up to my correction points. Hyuga clansmen can activate the Byakugan simply by cultivating step by step, but no one truly knows what the real key factor for activating the Byakugan is. It could be physical fitness, age, bloodline purity, or the cumulative effect of multiple factors. But in short, the result was that Hinata became the earliest person in the history of the Hyuga clan to activate the Byakugan. A genius. She even activated it slightly earlier than Hyuga Neji. At this point, even Hyuga Hiyashi had to admit that there was a problem with his educational methods. Comparing the common thread in Hinata's recent noticeable progress, it was that on the previous day, she would spend time with Hyuga Kiyoshinari, eating freely until she was full. A horse, though it may possess the ability to travel 1,000 miles, if it is not fed enough, its strength will be insufficient, its talent and beauty will not be apparent, and it will be unable to compete even with common horses. How can one expect it to travel 1,000 miles? Although Hyuga Hiyashi had never read this article, the underlying principle was something he was slowly and painfully digesting. Throughout the entire lunch, Hiyashi ate while observing Hinata out of the corner of his eye. Her posture was proper, her back straight, and every movement conformed to the etiquette expected of a clan's young miss. Their family adhered to a traditional system of separate meal portions, with each person receiving different amounts of food. The food on the plate in front of Hinata was always eaten completely clean, without a single grain of rice left. In the past, Hiyashi had always viewed this as an expression of Hinata's virtue of diligence and frugality, a quality that the successor he raised ought to possess. Until Hyuga Kiyoshinari appeared, he had never considered that Hinata was simply not getting enough to eat. Since then, Hiyashi had instructed the maids to prepare more food for Hinata, but the amount a single plate could hold was limited. And as soon as Hinata finished the food in front of her, she would immediately put down her chopsticks and say, "I am finished eating." But this time, as Hinata prepared to stand up and leave, Hiyashi suddenly spoke up and asked, "Are you full?" Hinata was startled for a moment, but then replied, "Yes, father, I am full." Hiyashi knew that Hinata would never show that side of herself in front of him again, but he could not let such a thing hinder Hinata's talent. He took a deep breath and changed his approach. "I saw your performance this morning. Your progress is very noticeable, no, I should say astonishing. The training plan originally set for you is clearly no longer keeping up with your current level. Until a new plan is ready, you may have free time. Go wherever you want, do whatever you want." After Hinata left, Hiyashi closed his eyes and couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Afterward, he called for Hyuga Homan and asked, "The day to distribute living expenses to the clan orphans is coming soon, isn't it?" Homan paused slightly, then replied, "Yes, clan chief, in about 3 days. Hiyashi nodded. "Increase Hyuga Kiyoshinari's portion by 20% based on last month's amount. Also, inform him privately that any expenses incurred while accompanying the young miss can be fully reimbursed by the clan at any time. Tell him not to have any concerns." "Yes, I understand. There was no other way." Since Hinata couldn't relax in front of him, he could only let Hyuga Kiyoshinari handle it. The afternoon sun was warm. On a hillside west of Konoha village, Hyuga Kiyoshinari sometimes came here to lie down for a while and clear his mind. However, today, this auspicious spot was occupied by another visitor. Kurama Yakumo sat there quietly, with a portable easel set up in front of her. A landscape painting on the board was mostly finished, and she was adding the final details. Occasionally, she would pause, squint slightly to examine it, and then continue painting. Finally, when the last stroke fell, Yakumo let out a long breath, gently working the stiffness out of her shoulders and neck. Few people came to this place. She had noticed Hyuga Kiyoshinari as soon as he appeared. Since he neither approached nor spoke, she remained focused, continuing to immerse herself in the world beneath her brush. Now that the painting was finished, it was time to leave. "My name is Hyuga Kiyoshinari, and your painting is very beautiful." His voice caused Yakumo to pause slightly in the act of packing her brushes. "I am Kurama Yakumo. This might be a bit presumptuous, but, could I ask you to draw something for me? I am willing to offer compensation." Yakumo was slightly surprised by his familiarity, but, "Since you didn't disturb me, what do you want me to paint?" "Something very special." Kiyoshinari paused, a trace of reminiscence inappropriate for his age flashing in his eyes. "I will describe it, and you draw it. Can you do that?" "No problem." Yakumo sat back down in front of the easel, fixed a new canvas in place, and said, "Go ahead." Kiyoshinari took a few steps closer, standing slightly behind and to the side of Yakumo, so he could see the canvas without blocking her light. First, he is a humanoid silhouette, tall, upright, a warrior. Yakumo took out a charcoal pencil and sketched the basic outline. In just a few strokes, she established the general proportions and stance. Like this. Kiyoshinari examined it carefully and continued, the head needs to be drawn specially. Not a normal human face, but shaped like a Buddha statue. The eyes need to be drawn as ovals. Yakumo's brush paused as she seemed to visualize the image in her mind. Then, based on Kiyoshinari's suggestions, she modified it bit by bit. A peculiar head structure gradually appeared on the paper. The oval eyes were particularly striking, conveying a sense of calm yet highly penetrating gaze. Next is. 10 minutes later, Yakumo put down her brush and held her breath, staring at the final image completed on the canvas. It was a giant. Smooth and simple silver red lines outlined a powerful form with incredible visual impact. On its chest was a blue circular crystal, which, according to his specific request, was drawn with a glowing texture. The entire figure exuded an indescribable sense of divinity and mystery, making people instinctively want to look up at it. What is this? Yakumo finally couldn't help but ask the question in her heart. Did you imagine it? Ultraman. Kiyoshinari said softly. I call him Ultraman. In my story, he is a hero. When all problems, all pain, all emotions, are materialized into monsters. Yakumo gazed into his eyes. For some reason, she suddenly felt as if her inner world had been completely seen through by him. Then, his voice slowly sounded in her ear. Ultraman can come and destroy them. What a strange person. This was Kurama Yakumo's assessment of Hyuga Kiyoshinari. I should go. If I don't go home soon, Mom will worry about me. She put away her easel and handed over the Ultraman drawing. It was quite pleasant chatting with you. I hope you can write that story soon. I will, but. Kiyoshinari took the scroll and blinked. Can you help me draw the illustrations? Let's talk about it next time. But Kurama Yakumo never expected that, next time, would come so soon. 1 week later. Kiyoshinari followed a doctor to the door of a patient room. Looking through the small window on the door, one could see Kurama Yakumo lying quietly on the sickbed, her face so pale it was almost devoid of color. Besides Yakumo, the room also held her father, Kurama Serrano, and her teacher, Kurenai Yuhi. As Hyuga Kiyoshinari pushed the door open and entered the room, Kurama Serrano immediately stood up to greet him. Ah, you must be Hyuga Kiyoshinari, right? May I ask? He paused, can you contact Lady Tsunade? The hospital really can't figure out the cause of Yakumo's illness. Kiyoshinari gently shook his head. I'm very sorry, Mr. Kurama. Even if I could contact my teacher, given the current tense situation at the border, she wouldn't have time to return to the village. And given Yakumo's current physical condition, she probably can't withstand a long journey to seek medical treatment elsewhere. Hearing this, a look of deep disappointment instantly flashed across Kurama Serrano's face, but he didn't give up and pressed on. Then you. I have not yet mastered medical ninjutsu. Kiyoshinari answered honestly. Just then, Yakumo, who was in the sickbed, seemed startled by the voices and slowly opened her eyes. When she saw Kiyoshinari, a hint of surprise appeared on her pale face. Hyuga. Kiyoshinari. I didn't realize you were Lady Tsunade's disciple. Kiyoshinari walked to the bedside. How are you feeling? I'm okay, just a bit tired. Yakumo forced a smile. I always feel exhausted and don't want to do anything. Suddenly, Hyuga Kiyoshinari's next sentence reignited hope in Kurama Serrano's eyes. I brought a doctor with me. Let it take a look at you, okay? Kiyoshinari stepped back, formed hand signs, and finally pressed one palm onto the bed surface. Bang! As a puff of white smoke dissipated, a slug about the size of a fist appeared in the patient room. Lord Kiyoshinari, why did you summon me? Is there danger? No, Lord Slug. Kiyoshinari pointed to Yakumo on the bed. Please help diagnose this patient's condition. Her body is weak, but the doctors here cannot find the cause of her illness. I understand. The slug slowly crawled toward her. Please allow me to examine her. Kurenai Yuhi then added. Yakumo's daily life is fine, but she gets extremely tired if she cultivates for even a short time, whether it's taijutsu or genjutsu training. When the slug's tentacles touched Yakumo's arm, a gentle wave of chakra spread out, and Kurenai Yuhi quieted down. The examination lasted about 5 minutes. Throughout the process, the slug remained silent, and the elderly father's heart tightened increasingly. As the saying goes, don't fear the smiling traditional Chinese medicine doctor, fear the one whose brow is furrowed low. This saying also applied to the current scene. Finally, the slug retracted its tentacles, and Hyuga Kiyoshinari actually saw an expression of surprise on the face of a slug. The cause has been found, but strictly speaking, it cannot be considered an illness. What is it, then? Kurama Serrano asked urgently. Her mental energy is simply too powerful, the slug slowly stated. I have met countless humans, but this is the first time I have encountered someone with such strong mental energy. Strong mental energy, isn't that a good thing? Kurenai Yuhi asked, puzzled. Strong mental energy indicates exceptional talent in genjutsu. The Kurama clan specializes in genjutsu, possessing a bloodline limit known as five senses manipulation. Although the ninja clan has declined, every few generations, someone appears with abilities far surpassing their peers, and Kurama Yakumo is one of them. However, previous ancestors did not experience similar problems. The slug shook its tentacles from side to side and explained, strong mental energy and overly strong mental energy are two different things. It's like a bag. If you try to force water far exceeding its capacity into it, the bag itself becomes extremely fragile. Her body cannot bear such a powerful soul, which is what leads to her external manifestation of physical weakness. This diagnosis was unexpected by everyone. For a moment, the entire room fell silent. Then, is there a way to treat it? Kurama Serrano asked the crucial question. The slug couldn't help but sigh. If it's not an illness, why talk about treatment? Yakumo stretched out her finger, touched the slug's tentacles, and pleaded, Lord Slug, I want to become a ninja. Can you help me? Alright, the slug finally relented. I can use natural energy to condition your body and, at the same time, remove some of the excess mental energy to alleviate the burden on your body. However, this process must be very slow and gradual, or your body won't be able to handle it. Then let's do it. Serrano immediately said. As long as Yakumo can be cured, any method is fine. Let me repeat myself. The slug extended its tentacles toward him in a gesture resembling the Great Desolation Heaven imprisoning finger, and its tone became solemn. She is not sick, and this is not treatment. I am merely helping her maintain a relatively balanced state and temporarily alleviate the burden. But given the nature of her soul, the situation will revert to its current state in about 1 or 2 months. Just then, Kiyoshinari inquired, what about the future? What will happen when she grows up? It won't get much better. While the body grows, the soul also grows, this is true for every life. The slug thought for a moment and added, actually, this condition won't be life-threatening. Life won't kill itself. She'll be fine as long as she doesn't engage in physical activity. After Kurama Serrano heard the slug's words, the expression on his face underwent a complex transition from hope to disappointment and then back to hope. He looked at his daughter lying in the sickbed, an unspeakable sorrow rising in his heart. Yakumo, Lord Slug also said that as long as you don't engage in physical activity, you'll be fine. Becoming a ninja, your body simply cannot handle it. Yakumo did not answer him immediately. Instead, she turned her head to look at the ceiling, her eyes slightly vacant. At this moment, only the faint buzzing of medical equipment could be heard in the room. Should I give up becoming a ninja? Yakumo questioned herself internally, but in the very next second, she had already made her choice. But, I have a reason why I must become a ninja. Natural energy is very dangerous, so, except for Kiyoshinari-sama, everyone else please leave this room. Hearing the slug's warning, Kurama Serrano held his daughter's hand. Yakumo, Papa will be right outside the door. Don't be nervous, okay? I know, Papa. Kurama Yakumo nodded obediently. He stood up and bowed to the slug and Hyuga Kiyoshinari. My daughter, I entrust her to you. After a final glance at Yakumo, he turned and left the ward with Kurenai Yuhi. Then, let's begin. The slug slowly crawled onto Kurama Yakumo's forehead. Next, you might feel some strange sensations, but these are all normal. Do not resist. I understand. Kurama Yakumo took a deep breath, but her body still involuntarily tensed up. Hyuga Kiyoshinari thought for a moment and said, Yakumo, do you still want to hear me tell a story? She paused, then nodded. Okay. The story begins with a woman. It was past 11 at night when she got home from work. Dragging her tired body into her empty apartment, she couldn't even bother to turn on the lights. Just by listening to the words, Yukumo's rich imagination automatically sketched that scene in her mind. Am I really suited for illustration? Hyuga Kiyoshinari's story continued. A man named R delivered messages from the ship, telling those who longed to escape this world when and where the ship would pick them up. But for the protagonists J and K, R was merely deceiving everyone, collaborating with the ship to abduct those people. So they began to investigate R's past, but knew very little about this man, only that his wife had committed suicide. Suicide. Why? Yakumo couldn't help but exclaim. She was completely engrossed in the story, and her previously tense body unconsciously relaxed. Kiyoshinari shook his head and said, I don't know. But R was desperate about this world because of his wife's death. He wanted to escape this hopeless world no matter what. For him, and for those in the same situation as him, the ship was hope. Kurama Yakumo frowned slightly. I still can't quite understand what kind of feelings they had when they boarded the ship. That's normal, Hyuga Kiyoshinari smiled. In stories, whenever the protagonist says, can't you feel the beauty in this world? The villain always has to say, if I could feel it, why would I be a villain? You mean, I'm the villain. Ha ha ha. Just kidding. Then, Kiyoshinari continued. When Jay met R, he asked him, tell me, R, why did they abandon this world and leave? Is this world truly worthless to them? But R denied it. He shook his head and told Jay, you've got it backward. They once believed this world could bring them happiness. They worked hard, followed the rules, did everything society expected of them. But can their true selves do whatever they like? Amidst their frantic work, they never even had time to think like that once. The harder they tried, the more they felt their own weakness. The more they gave, the less they saw in return. In the end, they couldn't even see their own existence anymore. Yakumo's eyes became complex. She seemed to hear something from these words. There was a contradiction in the story's characters, the mental self and the physical self, the contradiction between reality and ideals. Just like no matter how hard she tried to cultivate, her body wouldn't allow it. So they thought, is what exists here truly me? But the world wouldn't answer their questions. Just then, Kiyoshinari suddenly said in a relaxed, even somewhat comical tone. And at this moment, the story's narration appeared, saying, lonely people always needlessly increase their worries, so please actively raise small animals like cats and dogs. Yakumo paused, then couldn't help but laugh. What is this? What a strange narration. Jay asked him. Kiyoshinari's voice became serious again. Are you the real R? Are you the real R? Are you the real Kurama Yakumo? Or am I just trying to become the Kurama Yakumo everyone expects? Do I want to become a ninja truly for myself? Or just to fulfill others' expectations? Kiyoshinari, are you subtly hinting at me? Kiyoshinari shook his head. I'm just telling a story. Before I met you, this story already existed in my mind. For the same story, 1,000 people who read it will have 1,000 versions. The story itself has no fixed meaning, meaning is given by the reader. I know very well what I'm doing. Becoming a ninja is not just because of my clan members' expectations, I myself also hope that this talent won't be buried. Kurama Yakumo turned to look into his eyes. I want to become a ninja. This is the real Kurama Yakumo. So, Kiyoshinari looked at her, do you still want to hear the rest of the story? Yakumo smiled and replied, of course, Ultraman hasn't appeared yet. Finally, the ship arrived. R wanted to invite Jay to board the ship together, but Jay said, if this ship is truly as you say, then you don't need such a thing. Haven't you gotten anything yet and already want to escape? Jay asked one last question. R, do you truly believe in this ship? And R replied, I want to try to believe in this ship. Yakumo subtly clenched her fist. Did he find his true self at this last moment? Perhaps. Kiyoshinari shook his head, but the ship was a liar. It killed R. An enraged Jay transformed into Ultraman and destroyed the ship. Is that the end of the story? No, the end of the story is, on an ordinary night, in an ordinary apartment, there was an ordinary woman thinking, can a lonely me form any connections with anyone? Kurama Yakumo couldn't help but feel puzzled. If that's the case, then nothing has changed, right? People will still await the appearance of the next ship. So, what was the purpose of Ultraman appearing? Hyuga Kiyoshinari answered her thus. No matter what kind of story it is, Ultraman will always appear, then defeat the monster, and bring an end to the story. The slug's treatment was over. Kiyoshinari picked it up and said the last sentences. Kurama Serrano and Kurenai Yuhi pushed open the door and rushed in. Let the next story begin. Conan sat at the table, a few strands of messy hair clinging to her cheek. In her hand was a report on the power supply line system for the Hidden Rain Village residential area. The pen in her hand moved across the paper, making a faint scratching sound, and the clock on the wall pointed to 2 in the morning. Just then, the office door was pushed open. It was Pain. Still working. Conan didn't even put down what she was holding, answering without raising her head. Yes, there are still some documents that need processing. Pain looked around. Mountains of piled documents, various schedules and engineering blueprints covering the walls, and the incandescent lamp whose color had turned dull yellow. It's already very late. You should rest. I know. Pain walked up to her desk, looking at the dense array of documents and at Conan, who was still working at her desk. You've been working overtime for many days straight. I think you are wasting too much time on the affairs of the Land of Rain. Conan, your body will give out first. Conan put down her pen, looked up into his eyes, and suddenly asked, Nagato, do you still remember Yahiko's initial idea after the battle between Hanzo and the Sannin? Pain was silent for a moment, then said, in this world of endless war, I will become the god of the world. I will not forget Yahiko's dream, nor will I forget Yahiko's suffering. Do you think God can truly change this world? As long as we possess power that surpasses everything, we can achieve anything. Pain walked to the window and spread his arms toward the Hidden Rain village below, as if embracing the world. Haven't we already done so? We used the power of the Rinnegan to change this country, freeing the people of the Land of Rain from the suffering and displacement caused by war. Once we obtain the power of the tailed beasts, we can change the world, and Yahiko's dream will be realized. But, Conan paused, stood up, and walked to the window to stand beside him. What if the power of the Rinnegan still can't surpass everything? Pain, however, raised his hand and pointed to the sky. If the mood strikes me, I can stop this rain at any moment. This is the power of God. I can do anything. He was slightly agitated, but Conan simply countered flatly, then, can you make the Land of Rain as prosperous as the Land of Fire? Pain's fingertips trembled almost imperceptibly. That question was a bit beyond the scope, wasn't it? Conan turned and walked back to her desk, picking up the document from before. Look at this. This is the new power system plan. Once this system is complete, there will be no dark corners left in the entire Hidden Rain village at night. Every street will be illuminated by streetlights, and every family will have access to stable electricity. Children can continue reading at night, workers can work in factories during the evening, and shops can extend their business hours. Light will dispel darkness, Conan said softly. Not just literal darkness, but the darkness in their hearts. When people see hope, they will believe that happiness is within reach. Pain stood beside her, no longer looking up at the sky, but gazing down at the village shrouded in rain. In his Rinnegan, the outline of the village was clearly visible. Conan, that trip to the Land of Fire changed you a lot. Perhaps. Conan didn't deny it, she just raised her hand to lightly touch her chest. The outline of the notebook felt reassuring beneath her fingertips. I just feel that peace shouldn't be our endpoint. If it were Yahiko, he would do this too. This statement made Pain fall silent. Conan walked back to her desk and picked up several other documents. I asked some idle white Zetsu clones to collect information on systems from Konoha and the Land of Fire, medical, educational, all industries. I hope to make the Land of Rain better. After an unknown amount of time, Pain finally spoke, but that's no reason for you to still be working here at 2 in the morning. Now, you should go back and rest. Starting tomorrow, I will handle these official duties with you. Conan turned around, looking at him with some surprise. You. Although I'm not skilled at it, I can learn, Pain promised her. I can do anything. For your sakes. The next day, Pain and Conan worked together in the office, dealing with the official duties left over from the previous day. Suddenly, several white Zetsu drilled up from the ground. According to Zetsu, These were its clones, but each possessed independent consciousness and could be commanded individually. We're back, they shouted in unison. Conan nodded. Where are the things I asked for? One of the white Zetsu pulled out a scroll bag and placed it on the desk. They're all here. Conan took the bag and opened it. Inside were several scrolls, each labeled with different content. Konoha's education system, the Land of Fire's tax policy, Konoha's medical system. Just then, one white Zetsu suddenly shouted excitedly. Oh, right, right. We also found something really fun. It pulled a magazine out of its body and waved it in front of Conan. It was a brand new publication with colorful illustrations on the cover. Conan frowned slightly. What is this? The white Zetsu clone cheerfully explained. The name is Konoha Literary Monthly. We heard a few people created it, imitating the magazines from the capital of the Land of Fire. There's an author inside who is practically our soulmate. A literary magazine. But seeing how hard the white Zetsu had worked to collect so much useless information for her, Conan decided to at least let them finish what they wanted to say. The white Zetsu continued, the author's personal bio says, humans live only to keep poop warm. Conan and Pain froze simultaneously. What? That sentence is so philosophical. The white Zetsu continued talking, completely oblivious to the expression gradually freezing on Conan's face. Think about it. People eat food, and the food turns into poop inside their stomachs. Before it's expelled, the poop is always warm. Therefore, humans live only to keep poop warm. What a profound insight. Another white Zetsu clone also leaned over and agreed. Yeah, this author really understands us. Conan's mouth began to twitch, and even Pain couldn't help but look up at them. But at that moment, the white Zetsu holding the magazine suddenly became somewhat dejected, and its voice dropped. But, we don't have an anus, and we can't poop. I really want to know what it feels like to defecate, another white Zetsu lamented. The white Zetsu holding the magazine looked up, genuine confusion seeming to show in its simple eyes. If humans live to keep poop warm, and we don't even have poop, then what is the meaning of our lives? What is it? The other white Zetsu echoed, their voices filled with sorrow. Conan regretted her decision. She was about to speak and tell these annoying creatures to get out immediately. I truly want to meet this author. Anyone who can write such profound philosophy must be a remarkable thinker. What was his name again? Let me see. The white Zetsu holding the magazine flipped through it. Oh, his name is Hyuga Kiyoshinari. Conan's words, which had been right on the tip of her tongue, abruptly stopped. She then changed her request. Could you let me see the magazine you have? Huh. The white Zetsu holding the magazine was surprised. Lady Conan, are you also interested in what it feels like to poop? Give it to me. Conan opened the magazine, silently reading. This magazine featured about a dozen stories, with authors not only from Konoha but also collecting works from various parts of the Land of Fire. Most other authors' introductions lengthily detailed their prominent statuses, but Hyuga Kiyoshinari's section only had a simple sentence. As living beings, our main mission is to live, consume enough energy daily, drink plenty of water, supplement necessary vitamins, and stay away from dangerous factors. Besides that, nothing else matters. The meaning of life is to keep shit warm. Upon reading this, Conan couldn't help but chuckle. Pain didn't disturb her rare moment of rest. He merely waved the white Zetsu away and continued to pore over the complex documents on his desk. Conan's gaze continued to wander through the words, and when R and boat caught her eye, the figure of the man with the mysterious mask involuntarily appeared in her mind. Back then, Yahiko sacrificed himself, and all of Akatsuki's companions fell under the blades of Hanzu's subordinates. For her and Nagato, who were deeply mired in despair at the time, the man with the mysterious mask was the boat that promised hope, capable of carrying them out of their sea of suffering. However, whether it was this so-called boat, or the man with the mysterious mask, it was all just a meticulously crafted deception. They were all liars. Even someone as powerful as Ultraman, who could destroy that boat with a mere flick of a hand, was powerless to eliminate the deep-seated loneliness in people's hearts. People would still await the appearance of the next boat. Similarly, the Rinnegan was the same. There would always be a power stronger than the Rinnegan. No matter how powerful, power is merely a tool, and power itself cannot become hope. Border of the Land of Fire. Tsunade was listlessly sipping her tea, which had become her only solace. There was nothing she could do, Shizune was too strict, mercilessly depriving her of even the occasional chance for a small drink. Just then, Hyuga Kiyoshinari sent a magazine via the Slug Immortal. Tsunade took the publication, slightly stunned. This feeling, it was probably like a child who, no matter what achievement they made, couldn't help but show it off to an adult. It's really a nostalgic feeling. Tsunade chuckled and casually opened the magazine. Initially, she was just idly looking, but she was quickly drawn in by the story's content. If this boat is truly as you say, then you don't need such a thing. Are you trying to escape before you've even gained anything? This sentence was like a switch, touching something deep within her, and memories surged like a tide. Nawaki's disfigured corpse, Dan's dying murmur of, "I don't want to die," and the suffocating, heavy-pained Konoha village brought her. After enduring so much suffering, wasn't her choice a complete and utter escape? Believing that if she just left, she could forget the pain. Tsunade put down the magazine, closed her eyes, and murmured softly. The true Tsunade. How similar she was to R in the story. The harder she tried, the more she felt her own weakness. The more she gave, the less she saw in return. She chose to give up and run away before she had even gained anything. But the difference was, the boat R tried to believe in was a liar, while she found the true boat, and the true Tsunade. Kiyoshinari, no matter what, I believe in you. You will surely accomplish what our ancestors could not. Konoha village, Hyuga Hinata also held a magazine in her hand. She heard that Kiyoshinari and Uncle Ishida had started this, Konoha Literary Monthly. After the first issue was printed, Kiyoshinari took a few copies and gave one to each of his friends. And she heard from others that the publication sold out as soon as it was released, becoming very popular, even Hokage-sama bought a copy. Hinata wasn't interested in other people's works, so she directly flipped to the section featuring Kiyoshinari's novel and began to read. However, as she delved deeper into the reading, she discovered undercurrents surging beneath the story's surface. R's escape was due to the pain caused by his wife's suicide, but what about the others in the story? They had no painful past, just as it was written at the end. On an ordinary night, in an ordinary apartment, with an ordinary person, for them, was this world truly so worthless? Oh, I understand, the people in the story also carried their own, caged bird seal. Although she didn't know what it was, this was Kiyoshinari's story, after all. Even though he was always so open-minded and cheerful in his daily life, ultimately, he was also from the branch family. His stories would always have some shadow of the Hyuga clan. But under the shackles of the caged bird seal, the clan members wouldn't even have the chance to escape, nor would there be a boat to pick them up, not even a fake one. Even someone as powerful as Ultraman was helpless. Could this, to some extent, represent Kiyoshinari, also being helpless? Then can I truly do it? In the dark underground, Danzo Shimura also held that Konoha Literary Monthly, his face full of disdain. Ultraman, ultimately a childish heart nature. Is this the work Hiruzen values? That brat wouldn't understand that in this world, there are no obstacles that absolute power cannot crush. All problems, in the end, are simply a matter of insufficient power. With a crisp snap, Danzo casually tossed the magazine onto the table, the red giant in the illustration seemingly standing on the tabletop. That brat himself was insignificant, but inexplicably, he got involved with a Jinchuriki, even becoming friends with one. As a result, the Jinchuriki gained emotional ties and would no longer easily fall into a helpless situation, and his last hope of snatching the Jinchuriki from Hiruzen's grasp completely vanished into thin air. But that wasn't all, that brat also became Tsunade's disciple. If not for him, why would Tsunade interfere in the Hyuga clan's affairs? And why would she use this opportunity to stay? Once that woman officially returned, the position of fifth Hokage, perhaps, a shadow flashed in Danzo Shimura's eyes. As for the focus of everyone's discussions, Hyuga Kiyoshinari himself, at this moment, was holding his newly written second story, looking for Kurama Yakumo to draw illustrations. He was completely unaware that merely writing a story would cause such a huge reaction. After Kurama Yakumo carefully read the second story, She put down the manuscript and couldn't help but ask, Kiyoshinari, the Ultraman only defeated a giant monster formed by the body integration of parasites. But, there are countless parasites still lurking in the crevices of human society. Why is it that in your story, even though Ultraman achieved victory, it always gives a feeling that nothing has truly changed? Hyuga Kiyoshinari received an invitation and sat down at Ichiraku Ramen. Uncle Tuki brought out 2 steaming bowls of rice noodles. The white noodles swirled in the red, oily broth, topped with chopped green onions and crushed peanuts, emitting an enticing aroma. Kiyoshinari, this is the spicy and sour flavor I tried to make based on what you told me. Want to try it? I'm digging in. Hyuga Kiyoshinari nodded in response, then picked up his chopsticks. Hyuga Hinata also picked up her chopsticks, lifted a few strands of rice noodles, and slowly put them into her mouth. Kiyoshinari noticed her distraction but didn't disturb her, quietly waiting for her to speak on her own. However, he was also wondering if Hinata had asked him out this time because the Ultraman story had worked. That story, he had specifically written for Hinata to read. And Kurama Yakumo, it was a bit embarrassing to say, but she was indeed an afterthought. If this story could also bring her strength, then that would naturally be even better. In the worldview of Ultra 7X, the biggest characteristic was the countless aliens, and the entire universe was filled with conflict. But in this world where Ultraman didn't exist, could humans truly fight against so many alien invaders? The answer was, humans had already been ruled by invaders since the very beginning of the story. However, the invaders named Gurachayasu were somewhat different. Under their rule, humans still lived as usual, completely unaware that Earth was occupied. The special agent unit to which protagonist J belonged fought desperately against the alien invaders every day, completely unaware that the superiors giving them orders were the invaders themselves. Gurachayasu lurked in underground caverns, controlling the spread of information and using an information network to control every move of human society, which was the narrator that appeared in the story. This was the result of modifications made by Hyuga Kiyoshinari to prevent the people of the ninja world from misunderstanding certain concepts, but the general story and its essence remained consistent. For example, under the rule of the narrator, this world had the following advantages. First, there was no war in the world of the story. People lived in a state of complete peace, which was the dream of countless ninja. Second, humans didn't need to think. The narrator wasn't just visible to people outside the story, people within the story could also see it. The narrator would tell them what to do or what not to do, and as long as they acted according to what the narrator said, everyone could live a life free from worries about food and clothing. Third, the narrator established a special agent organization, and the agents would secretly eliminate invaders and maintain peace and security worldwide. Fourth, the narrator also considered the future of humanity and launched the Water God Project, aiming to create controllable infinite energy. Thus, we learned that these rulers were keen on maintaining a peaceful and stable society, while also protecting Earth from other invaders. Thinking this way, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call them guardians of humanity. In this world filled with ferocious invaders, it was an incredibly fortunate thing for humans to live on Earth like sleeping children. They created a utopian world, while Gurachayasu hid their achievements and fame deep, never letting humanity know of their existence. What a great race! Until the Red Giant appeared and killed every single one of them. But look at the background of this story, and how similar it is to the Hyuga clan. If you are an orphan from the branch family, the family will give you living expenses every month to ensure your livelihood. If you don't have ninja talent, the family will also provide you with work, such as becoming a maid. And as a member of the branch family, you don't need to think, you just need to obey the orders of the main family. The future of the family is for the main family to worry about, your mission is to protect the main family. Now that the benefits are over, what is the cost? After finishing a bowl of rice noodles, she took a small sip of soup, then softly called out, Kiyoshinari. Yes, I'm here. Hinata gripped her chopsticks tightly. If I want to go to the border, but father doesn't agree, then, would you be willing to secretly go with me? After asking that question, Hinata lowered her head, not daring to look at him. The surrounding sounds seemed to vanish, and in her ears, there was only the sound of her heart pounding wildly in her chest, as if it was about to break free from her body's constraints. I will, Kiyoshinari replied. Only 2 words, but for Hinata, these 2 words were more precious than any flowery language. Although given Kiyoshinari's personality, the answer would most likely be this, hearing it with her own ears made the feeling ultimately different. Okay. Hinata nodded, picked up her chopsticks, and started on her second bowl of rice noodles, her movements much more relaxed than before. She didn't need Kiyoshinari's actions, all she needed was that answer. Afterward, Hinata bid farewell to Kiyoshinari, returned to her room, and opened the black notebook, Life Simulator. 2 months had passed since the last simulation, and the cooldown period was finally over. If she waited a few more days, summer would arrive. Konoha year 56 inches. Father told me that I would soon have a younger sister or brother. Also, next year I will enter the Ninja Academy to study. At the end of the year, the second batch of clan members guarding the border also returned, and the third batch was about to depart. Surprisingly, Uncle Hazashi, who was not on this list, actually volunteered to go to the border to father. Father refused, and the two had an argument, which ended unhappily. I noticed that more and more clan members were changing, and a sense of unease welled up in my heart. I vaguely felt as if something big was about to happen. Now, I have 3 options. 1. Go find Kiyoshinari-kun and investigate privately. 2. Inform father and conduct a public thorough investigation. 3. Go find brother Neji and ask him directly. Without hesitation, Hinata chose the first option, and at the same time used the specify function to add her request. I left a letter for father, then found Kiyoshinari, hoping he could take me to the border. As I suspected, Kiyoshinari indeed had a way. He used the summoning technique to summon Slug, and then asked Lady Slug to use the reverse summoning technique to bring us to Lady Tsunade. The clan members of the branch family were very surprised to see me there. They advised me to return to Konoha, saying that in this dangerous place, they could not ensure my safety. I told them that I just wanted to come and see, and would return soon, and they finally relented. I stayed here for about a week, but I didn't find anything special here. What exactly is the reason for the changes in the clan members? Hinata couldn't figure it out. No matter how hard she tried, even personally investigating the border, she still gained nothing in this simulation, and the conflict between the branch family and the main family was inevitably about to occur. But the difference was, just as the volcano was about to erupt, Kiyoshinari-kun found me. He was also powerless to stop everything that was about to happen, but he could take me away from the Hyuga clan and accept Lady Tsunade's protection. We would make plans once everything settled down. Now, I have 2 choices. 1. Leave, and then wait and see. 2. Stay, and accept the final outcome. Do you want to run away before you've gained anything? Hinata gave a self-deprecating laugh. I decided to stay, and confessed the doubts in my heart to Kiyoshinari. Kiyoshinari was silent for a moment, and said, perhaps, it's because you have always been looking for the answer from the perspective of the main family's young miss. Just like the last simulation, the main family ultimately used the caged bird seal to quell the dispute. Even though Hinata constantly tried to improve the treatment of the branch family members in the simulator, the final result was still the same. This simulation ends here. Evaluation. This is all for your own good. Based on the comprehensive evaluation of this simulation, the host can receive the following rewards. Byakugan sight range slightly increased. Hinata closed the notebook and walked to the mirror. Looking at herself in the mirror, she tried to imagine what it would look like to have the cursed seal carved onto her forehead. However, the perspective of the branch family members was something she could not imagine. The next day, Kiyoshinari was holding a notebook, preparing to leave the house. Hinata. Are you going out? Yes, I have some matters to attend to. He looked at Hinata, thought for a moment, and added, do you want to come along? Hinata was stunned for a moment, then nodded. Oh okay, can I really come along? Of course you can. Kiyoshinari said with a smile. Let's go, I'll tell you about the situation on the way. On the way, Kiyoshinari walked and talked. I'm going to the Kurama family estate. Do you know the Kurama clan? Hinata nodded. I have a slight impression. I heard that the Kurama clan's accomplishments in Genjutsu are comparable to the Uchiha clans. That's them, Kiyoshinari continued. The person I'm meeting this time is Kurama Yakumo. She is the only person who inherited the Kurama clan's bloodline limit, but she is also burdened by it. Yakumo's mental energy is extremely powerful, so powerful that her body cannot handle it. She feels extremely exhausted after training for just a short while, making it nearly impossible for her to undergo ninja training. Her parents always advise her to give up on becoming a ninja. Hinata frowned slightly, showing a bit of empathetic sympathy. Then what is Kiyoshinari-kun going to do? Visit her. I'm going to help. Kiyoshinari shook his head. Lord Slug can use natural energy to help Yakumo regulate her body. Although it can't completely solve the problem, it can at least stabilize her physical condition so she can undergo a certain degree of training. But Lord Slug's conditioning effect usually only lasts for about 2 or 3 months, so I have to go back every once in a while. Hinata looked at Kiyoshinari, and a subtle, indescribable feeling suddenly surged in her heart. That feeling was delicate, as if something had gently tugged at her heart. What am I thinking? Kiyoshinari-kun is just helping treat an illness. She shook her head, trying to dispel this inexplicable throbbing. Unknowingly, the two had already walked to the Konoha North District. A mansion bearing the word, Kurama, came into view. Although it was not as grand as the Hyuga clan estate, it was still an old estate in Konoha. Kiyoshinari stepped forward and knocked on the door. Soon, the door was opened. Kiyoshinari. Seeing Kiyoshinari, Kurama Serrano immediately smiled. You're here. Yakumo has been waiting for you. Clan Chief Kurama, sorry for the intrusion. Kiyoshinari said politely, then introduced Hinata next to him. This is Hyuga Hinata, my friend. She happened to come with me today. Kurama Serrano looked at Hinata, paused for a moment on her smooth forehead, a flash of surprise in his eyes, and then nodded. So it's the young miss of the Hyuga clan. Please come in quickly. Please wait a moment, the two of you. I will prepare tea. Kurama Serrano said, turning and walking into the house. Kiyoshinari and Hinata waited in the living room. Before long, Kurama Serrano returned with the tea set, poured tea for the two of them, and then sat down opposite them. Kiyoshinari, is it the same as last time? Kurama Serrano asked. Kiyoshinari nodded. I have already communicated with Lord Slug. Thank you for your hard work, and please thank Lord Slug on my behalf. Kurama Serrano showed a grateful expression. If it weren't for you two, Yakumo. Kiyoshinari waved his hand. Clan Chief Kurama, there's no need to be so polite. Yakumo and I are friends. Besides, the one you should truly thank is Lord Slug. Then he turned to Hinata and explained apologetically. Hinata, the subsequent treatment will take some time, and it involves natural energy, which carries a certain risk. I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to wait here for a while. I understand. Hinata could understand his concerns. I'll just wait for you here. Kurama Serrano stood up. I'll take you to Yakumo's room. Only Hinata was left in the living room. The wall clock ticked faintly, and occasionally the chirping of birds could be heard outside the window. Hinata put down her teacup, her gaze falling on several landscape paintings on the living room wall. The paintings were extremely delicate, even an amateur could tell the artist was highly skilled. Signed in the corner of the work was the name, Kurama Yakumo. The painting. Hinata's gaze stopped at the signature, and she suddenly remembered something. That's right, in that publication, besides Kiyoshinari's name in the author column, there was another name, illustrator, Kurama Yakumo. So it was her. For some reason, Hinata felt a stuffiness in her chest, as if something was blocking it, making her very uncomfortable. She took a sip of hot tea, placed her palm on her chest, and at that moment, her gaze swept across the wall clock. Only 10 minutes had passed. Hinata was somewhat surprised. She felt as though a long time had passed, but in reality, only 10 short minutes had gone by. She remembered Kiyoshinari saying that the treatment process would be long. How long? 1 hour? 2 hours? During such a long time, what would they be doing? As soon as this thought arose, Hinata's body involuntarily stood up. She herself was startled, not understanding why she had suddenly risen. Should I go take a look? Just one look, just to confirm the situation. Didn't Kiyoshinari say that natural energy was dangerous? She found a flimsy excuse for herself. Yet her feet moved easily, heading in the direction Kiyoshinari had just left. Hinata's steps were extremely light, making almost no sound, instinctively utilizing the training techniques she had once received. There was a room at the end of the corridor. Just as she approached, she heard Kiyoshinari's voice coming from inside. Although this character is smiling, you need to draw it as a fake smile, creating a sense of crisis, making the reader feel this is foreshadowing, and that the plot will reverse later. Then there was a clear, bright female voice. A fake smile, is this the feeling? Exactly, Kiyoshinari's voice sounded happy. Yakumo, you're really amazing. You always instantly grasp what I'm trying to express. Not at all, it's just that Kiyoshinari, you describe it well. Hinata felt the stuffiness in her chest growing worse. Why is this? She couldn't figure it out. After nearly 2 hours of conditioning, Kurama Yakumo's complexion had visibly brightened. The slug, perched on Yakumo's forehead, slowly raised its head and retracted its tentacles. Lord Kiyoshinari, please extend your hand. Once the natural energy is cleared, we will be finished. Okay. Hyuga Kiyoshinari nodded and moved his hand closer to the slug. Just then, Yakumo asked with some curiosity, what's the difference between natural energy and chakra? The slug explained, chakra is the energy within a ninja's body, while natural energy is the energy that exists in nature. Trees, rocks, air, flowing water, all natural things contain natural energy, differing only in quantity. If one can cultivate and perfectly fuse natural energy with chakra, then one can. The slug's voice abruptly stopped, looking at Kiyoshinari with clear astonishment. What's wrong? Is there a problem? An urgent voice, accompanied by the sound of a door opening, came in. It was Hinata. Hinata. Kiyoshinari was a little surprised. I'm sorry. I was just worried about Kiyoshinari, so I came to check. Her voice grew softer and softer, almost inaudible. Kiyoshinari looked at Hinata's nervous and flustered appearance and couldn't help but chuckle. It's okay, thank you for worrying about me. How astonishing. The slug's voice was filled with admiration. Kiyoshinari, your body has an excellent affinity for natural energy. Good affinity. Hinata was stunned for a moment, not quite understanding what that meant, but it seemed like a good thing. As for herself, oh no. In an instant, Hinata's cheeks flushed red, and she turned to run, but Kiyoshinari grabbed her wrist. Since you're already here. Kiyoshinari naturally led her hand into the room, it's a good time to get to know each other. He first pointed to the girl on the bed, this is Kurama Yakumo, then turned to Hinata, and this is Hyuga Hinata. Hinata looked up, and their gazes met in the air, pausing subtly for a moment. Hello, I am Hyuga Hinata. Hello, I am Kurama Yakumo. After the two got acquainted, the slug immortal continued, simply put, you possess the aptitude to cultivate sage mode, and your aptitude is very good. How strange, why didn't I discover this last time? Sage mode, what kind of power is it exactly? Kiyoshinari pretended not to understand, humbly asking for guidance. The slug continued to clear the remaining natural energy while meticulously explaining to Kiyoshinari. As I just said, natural energy can be fused with chakra. By perfectly fusing natural energy, physical energy, and spiritual energy in a 1:1:1 ratio to refine sage chakra, one can enter sage mode. In this state, a ninja's various abilities will be greatly enhanced. Strength, speed, perception, and other physical functions will reach a whole new level. Ninjutsu performed with sage chakra will also be far more powerful than ordinary ninjutsu, we call them sage art. However, cultivating sage mode also comes with immense risks. Natural energy itself is quite wild, and a slight mistake can lead to life-threatening danger. Even if you possess the aptitude to cultivate sage art, you cannot practice diligently alone. You can come to Ruchi Cave to find me when you are older. I understand. Kiyoshinari nodded seriously. By the way, he took out his notebook and said to Hinata, help me see how this new chapter is. Hinata nodded in response, okay. At this moment, the slug was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, it crawled onto Kiyoshinari's head with great interest, looking down at the notebook in his hand. This time's story, Kiyoshinari opened the notebook, is set on a continent isolated overseas, inhabited by two races, each having established their own country. Their writing and culture are extremely similar in all aspects, as if they originated from two branches that diverged from the same ancient ethnic group. However, the two races are vastly different. One race is intelligent but physically weak, even weaker than ordinary humans who haven't trained. We call them Race A. The other race has a powerful physique, capable of contending with an Ultraman of similar size purely with physical strength. They are Race B. The former, unable to defeat the latter, fled to the human world. They lived in this place with no enemies and no wars, working hard and integrating into this world. Jay and his companions began an investigation, and Agent K believed that these fleeing members of Race A sincerely desired peace, which accounted for their behavior. But at this time, Race B sent a warrior to the human world to hunt down these fleeing members of Race A. In the process, some humans were accidentally injured, attracting Jay's investigation. However, as Jay delved deeper into the investigation, he discovered that Race A came to the human world not to escape, but to search for a weapon called orichalcum. This weapon was developed by their entire race's collective wisdom, specifically to counter Race B, but its development was discovered by Race B, and after some twists and turns, it accidentally ended up in the human world. Land of Rain, Hidden Rain Village. Conan held a brand new monthly magazine and read it aloud, sharing the story with Pain. With the help of Jay and his companions, Race A found orichalcum, and prepared to leave the human world. As they bid farewell, Agent K couldn't help but sigh. I wish the war would end soon. Race A smiled and nodded, replying in a very calm, almost matter-of-fact tone, yes, now we can kill them all. At the end of the story, the narrator read the conclusion, just received a report that Race A and Race B on the overseas continent have been annihilated. How foolish. Compared to them, our world today is so peaceful. Conan paused slightly, putting down the book. They perished together in the war. Pain didn't understand why Conan would show such an expression. It's just a fictional story. Conan flipped through the magazine, her gaze fixed on the smiling members of Race A in the illustration, unable to let go for a long time. The illustrator was truly amazing, depicting the two smiles before and after finding orichalcum so vividly. Look, whether it was Race B hunting Race A, or the two races fighting over orichalcum, they never truly harmed any human, only knocked them unconscious. This indicates that they are not inherently cruel and bloodthirsty races. However, when Race A found orichalcum, they didn't say things like, the war can finally end, or, peace is coming soon, but rather stated as a matter of fact, now we can kill them all. For them, hatred was no longer something deeply ingrained, but as common as breathing. Pain. Conan closed the magazine and said in a low voice, tell me, will the tailed beast weapons we created one day become the orichalcum that destroys humanity? Conan. Pain looked at her, his brow furrowing slightly. That's just a story. What are you worrying about? Conan stood up and looked at the hidden rain village outside the window, watching the people who gathered around the streetlights, waiting for them to turn on, even while getting soaked in the rain. We created a weapon like that, and those who lose everything because of it will inevitably one day direct their hatred toward the land of rain. I'm worried, if one day in the future, neither you nor I are here, who will protect the land of rain? Who will protect everything we have built? A rare flicker of unbearable sorrow appeared in Pain's Rinnegan. He closed his eyes, seemingly unwilling to let Conan see it. Achieving a permanent cycle through pain, deterrence, war, that is the goal of the Akatsuki. And within this system, over an infinitely long period, any nation could potentially become that price. But all of this is worth it. Because humans are foolish creatures who can never truly understand one another. But at that moment, Conan's eyes suddenly lit up. Then, can we create an eternally existing God? What? Pain suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Conan in surprise. Conan continued, humans are not smart. There will always be some who disregard everything for revenge. If the tailed beast weapons are rented out without restriction, humanity will eventually face extinction. We need a will to prevent this possibility and maintain the balance between pain and hope. We need a successor who will inherit your Rinnegan after we die. Once the goal of deterrence is achieved, he will retrieve the tailed beast weapons. When people forget this pain, he will rent the tailed beast weapons out again. And he will also search for the next successor, passing down the Rinnegan and this mission from generation to generation. This eternally existing God will maintain this fragile world. Pain turned his head to look at the hidden rain village below. I need to think about it. Besides, not everyone is qualified to bear the power of the Rinnegan. Conan was stunned for a moment, a hint of regret showing in her eyes. She almost forgot about that detail. Otherwise, Kiyoshinari would definitely have been the most suitable candidate. Oh, right, there's also the caged bird seal. Sigh. Ring-a-ling, ring-a-ling. The ringing of the mechanical alarm clock instantly flooded his mind, pulling Hyuga Kiyoshinari awake from his sleep. The time was 4:30 in the morning. Outside the window, the sky was transitioning from inky black to blue. Kiyoshinari stared at the gradient sky, took a deep breath, muttered, "Lao Da," in his heart, and prepared to wage a bitter struggle against the evil blanket. A few seconds later, Hyuga Kiyoshinari hit the snooze button, turned over, and faced away from 4 a.m. Konoha. I'm such a shiboi. Since graduating high school in his previous life, he had never gotten up early again. He had almost forgotten what it felt like. He shouldn't have agreed so solemnly. I heard Hinata wakes up this early too. Seriously, what kind of miserable life are these Hyuga kids living? And if those two are like this, how early must Might Guy, that king of effort, be waking up? It's all the slug immortal's fault. It praised me wildly to Tsunade, saying I had innate, immortal aptitude. Then Tsunade praised me fiercely in a letter to Hiruzen Sarutobi, and Hiruzen Sarutobi immediately told Hyuga Hiyashi. As soon as Hyuga Hiyashi returned, he sought out Hinata and Neji, telling them to pull me into training, saying I shouldn't waste my talent. Screw trying hard to cultivate. I should just honestly write scripts and coast through life. Just 5 more minutes of sleep. Being a little late won't hurt. At worst, I'll just stand while reciting the texts. Hyuga Kiyoshinari, whose mind was already fuzzy, closed his eyes while grumbling. But as everyone knows, once a person loses their alarm clock, 4:30 plus 5 minutes equals X. When they wake up is entirely up to fate. This is the only known controllable transmigration technique for humans. But he completely forgot that 2 external alarm clocks were waiting for him. He didn't know how much time had passed, he was sleeping so soundly he was oblivious to the world. Suddenly, 2 cold hands reached into his blanket and pressed against his neck. Hiss. Kiyoshinari suddenly opened his eyes and saw Neji squatting on the window, his face terrifyingly gloomy. Shish tilde, can we negotiate? Hinata took her hand out of his blanket and said with a smile, no, Kiyoshinari-kun tilde. 10 minutes later, Kiyoshinari yawned and followed the 2 of them out of the room. The sun had completely risen past the horizon. It was already past 6 o'clock. Kiyoshinari quickly took a couple of steps. I say, how about we go eat breakfast first? Hyuga Neji chuckled and pointed to the training ground. Let's run 2 laps first to work up an appetite. We'll enjoy the food more later. Sigh tilde. 1,000 words all condensed into a single sigh. Forget it, since I'm already here. Hyuga Kiyoshinari patted his cheeks, stretched his legs, and started running slowly into the cold wind. Although it was early summer, the wind at 6 in the morning was still a bit chilly, but after running 1 lap, his body would warm up. Fortunately, in this life, he hadn't become a frail university student who would spit out mouthfuls of unsalivable spit after running 1,000 meters, gasping and sighing, finally, it's over. The small goal of 1,000 meters, placed on his body in this life, was only equivalent to a lowly. Didn't experts in his previous life say that any task, if persisted in for 21 days, would become a habit? Isn't it just training? Isn't it just cultivation? I want to prove that besides playing on my phone, there are other things one can stick to for 21 days. A day of immersive experience in the genius training plan passed, and Hyuga Kiyoshinari collapsed onto the bed, dragging his exhausted body. He felt like he was slightly dead. Tomorrow, I absolutely won't go. To show his resolve, he used his last bit of small universe to reach out, pry the batteries out of the alarm clock, and then close the window latch. The next day, 4 a.m. Konoha. Ohayo tilde Kiyoshinari-kun. Facing Hinata's sweet wake-up service, Kiyoshinari only wanted to say, who invented good morning? Who exactly is having a good morning? Hyuga Kiyoshinari struggled to open his eyes, forcing himself to adopt a weak posture, and coughed twice. Cough, cough. Hinata. Neji. Cough, Cough. I think I caught a cold. I probably can't train with you today. You guys go ahead, don't wait for me. Before he could finish speaking, Neji grabbed his wrist and unceremoniously dragged him out of the blanket. Perfect. Go run 2 laps to sweat it out, and your cold will be better. You naturally evil Hyuga brat. This old man will personally. Thanks for watching.